Hello everybody, welcome to ASL, Ahmedabad School of Linguistics, and I'm your host Ronak Vaidya. So in today's session, we are going to learn the concept of present perfect tense. So that is to say, in English, first of all, can you give me a couple of examples of present perfect tense in English? First one, I have done the homework. I have done the homework. Second, we have already taken the lunch. We have already taken the lunch. I have come from Germany. I have come from Germany. Now let's analyze these three sentences as it has been our habit, okay? Because grammar, as I would have said previously, grammar is nothing but pure observation and analysis. So let's do that. I have done the homework. How many verbs are there? And which are those verbs? Two verbs, have and done. We have already taken the lunch. So how many verbs are there and which are those verbs? Once again, two verbs, have and taken. He has come from Germany. Let's say, he has come from Germany. So how many verbs are there and which are those verbs? Two verbs, has and come. So that is to say, whenever we make sentence in English using present perfect tense, we always have two verbs. One is the auxiliary verb or the helping verb, and the other is verb of action. Now let's pay attention to the title as well, heading as well once again. The title is present perfect tense. So in this title itself, we have tense is nothing but the time, and so the other two words are present perfect tense. So as we have already observed, whenever we make a sentence using present perfect tense, we have two verbs. And out of these two verbs, one verb, the auxiliary verb, the helping verb, is in the present tense, and the verb of action is in perfect tense. So that is to say, the past participle form. Now, what is the past participle form? In school, you would have learned, right? Cut, 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 put, tear, tore, torn, fly, flew, flown, eat, ate, eaten. Yeah? Take, took, taken. So the last column, okay, is called past participle. Some of you might recognize it as V3 form of the verb. So we have already learned in our session for structure how to make a sentence in German language when we are faced with two verbs, and out of those two verbs, one is the auxiliary verb and the other is the verb of action. Correct? We know that the auxiliary verb or the helping verb goes in the second position and the verb of action goes in the last position. Obviously, it remains unconjugated, but its form is decided by the form it has in English language. Now, in our examples, I have done the homework. We have already taken the lunch, and he has come from Germany. In these three sentences, we have observed that the verb of action is in past participle in English, and so in German also it will be in past participle. So the structure, whenever we make present perfect tense, whenever we make a sentence using present perfect tense in German, the structure would be the subject plus the auxiliary verb, the helping verb or the auxiliary verb plus predicate and the verb of action. And the verb of action will be in past participle. As auxiliary verb, in this, we use two verbs. There are two possibilities. As an auxiliary verb or the helping verb in present perfect tense in German language, the first option is haben, to have. And the second option is sein, to be. As we can also make sentence like it's already done, or I'm done. Yeah. So once again, the structure would be the subject plus the auxiliary verb, and the auxiliary verb is either haben or sein, obviously in conjugated form, plus predicate plus verb of action, and the verb of action will be in past participle. So in this entire structure, if you see, there are just two things that we don't know. The first thing is, how do we know when should I use haben and when should I use sein as my auxiliary verb? That is the first question. And second question is how to make the past participle form of the verb without having to mug it up. So let's start. The first question, when to use haben and when to use sein as my helping verb. So let me give you a couple of examples. In German itself. Ich habe die Hausaufgabe gemacht. Ich habe die Hausaufgabe gemacht. Wir haben schon das Mittagessen genommen. Wir haben schon das Mittagessen genommen. And er ist aus Deutschland gekommen. Er ist aus Deutschland gekommen. But as you can see in all these three sentences, the first one means ich hab die Hausaufgabe gemacht. I have done the homework. Second, wir haben schon das Mittagessen genommen. We have already taken the lunch. And er ist aus Deutschland gekommen. So that is to say he has come from Germany. Now as you can see in the first two sentences, I'm using the verb haben as my auxiliary verb. And in the third one, I'm using the form of sein as my auxiliary. So can you tell me what is it there in the third sentence which is non-existent in the first two sentences? Correct. If you have observed it, congratulations. Okay. So the correct answer is movement. So now a simple rule to understand when to use haben and when to use sein as a helping verb. Whenever there is a movement, or rather should I say whenever the verb of action itself, the important word here is itself. So whenever the verb itself shows some kind of movement from place A to place B, from one place to another place. Whenever the verb of action itself shows some kind of movement, we use sein as the auxiliary verb. And when there is no movement, okay, we use haben as the auxiliary verb. Let's look at some of the examples. Okay, I'll say some sentences in English. You simply have to tell me whether we should be using haben as an auxiliary verb or sein as an auxiliary verb. I have already read this book. I have already read this book. Haben. Yeah, there is no movement. Mr. Hesse has written this book. Mr. Hesse has written this book. Once again, haben. Yeah, no movement. We have played football. We have played football. Haben, once again. Now, if any of you is wondering, why haben, why not sein in football? There is clearly the movement. Yeah, they are going from one place to another place. So, how come haben and not sein? Well, as I said, what is the rule? Whenever the verb itself shows some kind of movement. Here the verb is play. We have played football. So play. So play. Well, here there is a movement, but that movement, it looks like there is a movement, but that movement is or appeared or shown because of the word football and not by the verb itself. Well, you can play chess. Where is the movement? You can play carom. Where is the movement? You can play football in a mobile. Where is the movement? So the verb play itself does not necessitate any movement. And so it should be haben. We have traveled to Germany. Clearly sein. Yeah? To travel, there is a movement. You cannot stay at the same place and say we have traveled. Yeah? So I hope it is clear. Okay, so once again, for one last time I'll say, whenever the verb of action itself shows some kind of movement from one place to another place, from place A to place B, then we use sein as the helping verb. In all other cases, we use form of haben. So that brings us to the second question, second unknown stuff in the structure, that how to make the past participle form of any verb. We already know that the verbs are generally of two types, regular verbs and irregular verbs. If the verb is a regular verb, okay, then the standard way to make past participle is simple. You simply add ge in front of the verb and replace en with t. So for example, wohnen I add ge in front of that, so gewonnen. But I have to also replace en with t, so gewohnt. Spielen, gespielt. Machen, gemacht, and so on and so forth. One more variation in regular verb itself. If the verb is regular, but it is ending in ieren, I-E-R-E-N, ieren. So for example, studieren, notieren, telefonieren. Then we simply replace en by t. We don't add ge in front of the verb. So notieren, the past participle simply becomes notiert. Telefonieren, telefoniert. Reparieren, repariert. I hope it's clear. Third possibility within regular verb is regular verb but separable verb. Regular but separable verb. So let's say the verb is aufmachen. Aufmachen. Machen, we already know it is gemacht. So you have to keep that in mind. Machen is gemacht. There should be no change. So machen is gemacht. So aufmachen, aufgemacht. Simple. Because it's anyway separable, right? So you can separate auf and machen and put ge in between. So auf and then machen is gemacht. Aufgemacht. I hope it's clear and super easy. Let's move on to irregular verbs. Now, as a general rule, later on in A2 you will learn though, okay, that there are two different types of irregular verbs. One is mixed irregular and the other is completely irregular verbs. So when it comes to completely irregular verbs, so generally how do we make the past participle of this completely irregular verbs? We add ge in front of the verb. We don't replace en by t, but what we do is we change the vowel in this term. Sometimes we change the vowel in this term. So let's say e, I'm changing the vowel e to o. E converts to o. So by that logic, expression would become gesprochen. Gesprochen. Nehmen would become genommen with double M. Yeah, G-E-N or double M-E-N. Genommen. But common simply remains gekommen. Gehen becomes gegangen. Well, completely different. Yeah. So certain irregular verbs, the past participle of them will have to remember. But there are not many. Hardly 7, 8. That should be enough for A1. And for A2, hardly around 15 or 16. And that is more than sufficient. You all will get the list of them. Now, let's say it is mixed irregular verb. So as the name suggests itself, it is mixed irregular verb. So it's a combination of both regular as well as irregular. So what will happen? How to make the past participle of such mixed irregular verbs? So we add ge in front of the verb. We replace en by t, and we also change the vowel in this term. So for example, wissen becomes gewusst. Yeah, gewusst. So as you can see, there is ge, en is replaced by t, and there is also a vowel change in this term. Let's look at one more category in irregular verbs. Irregular and separable. It's simple. It's very similar to regular and separable. We know common is gekommen. So uncommon would be simple, right? Ungekommen. Ungekommen, because it's separable. So we can put ge in between. Gehen is gegangen. So ausgehen would be aus. Gehen is gegangen. So aus, gegangen. Simple. And now the last category. Inseparable verbs. So the verbs which might look like separable, but they are not separable. For example, verstehen. Verstehen. Now, stehen is an irregular verb. And its past participle is gestanden. Gestanden. So, fur, stehen is gestanden, but now since fur is not a separable prefix, I cannot separate it and put ge in between. So I have to let it go. So fur, stehen becomes, instead of becoming fur gestanden, it will simply become verstanden, no ge. Because it's inseparable. It's not possible to separate it and put the prefix ge in between. One more example, bekommen. Now common we have already learned. Common is gekommen. So bekommen would become be gekommen, but its be is not separable prefix. So bekommen, bekommen. Bekommen remains bekommen itself. So I hope it is clear how to make the past participle of any German verb without having to mug it up. Well, almost. Now let's look at some of the examples. Let's say the sentence is, Mr. Hesse has written the book. Mr. Hesse has written the book. So the translation would be, Herr Hesse hat das Buch geschrieben. Herr Hesse hat das Buch geschrieben. I have not done it. I have not done it. Ich habe es nicht gemacht. Ich habe es nicht gemacht. We have traveled to Germany. We have traveled to Germany. Wir sind nach Deutschland gefahren. Wir sind nach Deutschland gefahren. I have already taken it. I have already taken it. Ich habe es schon genommen. Ich habe es schon genommen. Let's look at one Satzfrage. Have you called me? Have you called me? Hast du mich angerufen? Oder haben Sie mich angerufen? Let's look at one W-Frage as well. Why have you invited him? Why have you invited him? Warum haben Sie ihn eingeladen? And if it is informal you, then warum hast du ihn eingeladen? I hope it is clear. In case of any doubt, you know how to reach me. Till then, tata.